So, hello, my friends, and today we have a very special meeting with Klaus Nьюман. He is a manufacturer of mate, and his grandfather was the first who started to plant mate in Paraguay. Is it true?
Great grandfather.
Great grandfather.
Yeah, they came from Germany in 1886. There wasn't much to do, to sell, to produce in the farm. And mate, nobody could plant mate. Nobody could find the secret way of the seed to come out as a plant systematically. And he worked on this, and he found out the secrets. The secrets were basically in getting the seed at the right point when they were ripe, and putting it for a long time in its place under a certain amount of ground, and putting a little bit of water every morning and every afternoon. Incredibly, after 3 or 3.5 months, finally they come out. And this has put a big industry after all this, because today about 25,000 families in Paraguay produce their own mate in their properties, and produce about 100 million kilos of green mate, which comes to about 40 million kilos of dry mate. That is the Paraguayan production.
Mm-hmm. And a story of mate, how it began to be a product for not only for Paraguay,
yes,
very popular in other countries in Latin America. And
yeah, in 1536, the Spaniards in this area, they found that some of the Indians, the Guarani Indians, they had a little bag with them. And inside the leather bag, they had something that they didn't know what it was. It was dried mate leaves. And the Indians, there were no horses here. The way they moved from one place to another was walking, you know. And they told them that they used to put the mate tea in their mouth as a way to get more energy for the walk. At the beginning, the Spaniards considered mate as something that was not good. You know, it was a drug or as poisonous. But slowly people tried it, and they found out that it has no harm for the person's health. On the contrary, it was a stimulating drink, and they started using it with water. The Indians originally, they put it in their mouth. Yeah, they put it in their mouth, like they did, like the Bolivians do with their own leaves, you know? Yeah.
Is it they don't have a straw? What is the story of a straw? Because
this is,
no one knows.
Yeah, no. It is interesting that when they start using water, and they needed to sip some way, sometimes they did it just through their teeth. But then there's always somebody that finds out something, you know. We have taquara, is a little bamboo. It is very thin, but which is hollow. And you cut that, and they start taking it through that straw. And then they found out to put it a little bit together in the base, so only the water would come through. And then they developed this kind of thing. That is a classic bombilla. Here you have little holes. Here you sip it, and the water comes through with the flavor of the mate, but the tea stays in the gourd.
Yeah. And not come inside the straw.
Yeah, exactly. And one way to avoid that the little pieces come, the first mate should wait. Yeah, they say here in Paraguay, that's for Saint Thomas, which is a saint, you know. It doesn't taste very good. It's not the right temperature. It is not hot enough. But you should put it inside and let it maybe for half a minute or a minute, because the water will get into the leaves, and when you try to sip it, there are not anymore these loose pieces, you know. And so you avoid for this to come into your mouth. And in the old days, the first mate, they would spit it. Today you don't do it. I mean, it's not the best thing to do. You just know that who takes the first is a bit raw.
It's like a respect to your guest or your
because
friend.
the second one will have the right temperature, you know, because the water goes through the cold tea, the hot water, and the straw is cold, the gourd is cold, everything is cold. The first one is not the right temperature. So you drink it, the second one will be better, and the third one will be okay. Yeah.
And what about the discovering of technology of mate, of producing, because how it was changed in the years?
Yes.
Because it's only was like a drying of leaves by Indians.
There is a certain area of South America which includes a good part of Paraguay, a part of Brazil, close to the Paraná River, and also in the northern part of Argentina. The Paraná River has a very important importance to the distribution of the seeds also in all this area. And there you have these trees. These trees, the wild mate, you have trees of 10, 15 meters of height, you know, and they maybe are this thick. But industrially, these plants, they are maintained at a height of about 3 meters because you cut it with scissors, and then you cut more or less 1 meter away from it with the leaves, and then the new product comes out the following year. Today, a regular plant, which about up to 3 meters, produces about 3 to 4 kilos of green leaves per plant. And it's harvested in the winter. You harvest, our winter has no relation with European, and nevertheless with Russian winters. It doesn't snow here. 5 degrees Celsius for us is cold, you know?
It's
extremely cold. And then these are harvested normally in June, July, and maybe a little bit in August. But you have to finish to harvest before spring, when the plant wants to start again.
And usually the best mate is only harvested once a year. But is it there some less bad quality mate which can be harvested in other time, or usually always?
No, in the old days, I'm talking about 60, 70, 80 years ago, people believed that you have to harvest mate every 2 years. And so the leaf would become older. But I don't know anybody who does it now. It could be done on special request. It is economically not profitable because you don't have more kilos, because some of the trees from the leaves will be a little bit bigger, but some will fall off, you know.
But the taste, is it better?
Probably the taste would be stronger. I know of no serious study about this, because all the producers are against it. You know? Exactly. But we could try. We could try not to harvest some 50 trees or so in one area and wait for the next year and make a comparison.
It's a nice idea. Just to maybe sell it more expensive for ones who need it.
No. And you could say a 2-year plant. It's an interesting. Many people say that definitely it is stronger, you know. But nobody encourages it because it is not interesting as a. But we find today, until today, we find wild yerba mate, you know? And this is harvested in certain areas, but on a very limited level. We do have some wild mate in our depots. When we feel that certain mate is a little bit light, we add a little bit of this, and it gives it a better boost. But nobody takes it pure. It's a little bit rough to the taste.
If it's wild, it's very hard.
They have to climb on the tree, and they use a ladder, and sometimes they cut about this, with a saw, you know, and that will grow again from it, you know. And in the old days, when they had big plantations, they had restrictions how much you could cut. it would not be nice to cut this thick that could do harm to the plant. In the old days also they broke the plant, you know. What is done today, it's done with scissors. You have to cut, and you cut in a certain way that you can direct the new sprouts. You always try the new ones to go to the side and not to the center, you know. And this has to do, if you cut it like this, straight, it's no good, because the outer part of the plant grows faster than the hard part. And then it forms like a little something like this, and the humidity of the night stays inside, and it forms fungus. That's why you have to cut a little bit with a certain way that the water will rinse. You know?
Understood. And this is also not too harmful for the tree.
No. Well, we never heard one complaining. But in my job, I don't permit them to do this, to break, and I don't permit the machete. I use normal scissors, and we don't cut anything thicker than this. And from this part, one part is thrown away. Afterwards, you pick up the smaller leaves, and this little piece like this, which is thick like that, just stays there in the ground. But some people cut it much thicker. For those big cuts, there are today electric scissors. They're very strong. They have a battery, and he just puts a little push like this, and they will cut something this. So if you would do this with a normal scissor, after the third one, it would hurt, you know, and it wouldn't be possible. But I personally don't agree with that. I let our trees slowly grow bigger with the time. We cut, but we don't cut very deep, you know. So which means that the tree, we think that you can cut many years, maybe 10, 12 years, and then you can have one bigger cut to start the system again. It gives it, there are so many different theories and different techniques, but I don't allow to hurt the plant like this.
Because it's also
it's not necessary.
You kill the tree very faster and need to grow it again.
And then a regular mate tree, once it is planted, it takes approximately 5 years to have its first decent product. The first 3 years, we don't cut anything. Then you start cutting a little bit, giving it a little bit of a form, and in the 4th year, it is already profitable. And in the 5th year, it comes to the real possibility of 2 or 2.5 kilos per plant. And from the 5th to the 10th year, you will have probably the 5 best years of production. Then, from the year 12, 13 or so, it could slowly diminish. But this has to do also, if you fertilize a little bit, you can make natural fertilization, the amount of water it gets, you know. And we tell our people that no cleaning, nothing should be done with agrochemicals that could hurt the plant. We don't use Roundup, we don't use any of these things, and this is important to us. It is more expensive to clean around, but our tea does not have any agrochemicals in its whole system. No.
That's good, because it's also endemic tree for this region, and it's not need a lot of help from the people.
Exactly, yeah. If they have tried to plant mate in other areas. It is also mysterious. It has never worked. For example, the Dutch, the English, they took caoutchouc from Brazil and took it to Indonesia and made big plantations. They took other kinds of plants, you know. But mate tea did not work out right. Maybe it didn't die, but it didn't taste well. The mate needs a soil, if possible with red soil, but with enough sand, because it has to let the water go through. It is a soil also that has quite a lot of iron in its in its content. And if possible, it's always nice if the land is not completely flat. When it rains, it is good to have the water, but not the water to stay. The water that stands on the plant and goes down to the roots, it can hurt the plant. It is interesting to see that in many, after big floods or so, in certain areas, plants die of excess of water, you know. But they need a lot of water, especially during their first 3 or 4 years. When the tree has a root of about this size, it will hold a month without water, it will hold. But if it's more than 1 month in the summer, then you have to try to help with the water. Fortunately, in our place, we have groundwater that allows us 10,000 liters in one day to get out of the ground. Paraguay is one of the countries in the world with the largest known deposit of sweet, good water.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
And this is why
It's known as the Guarani Aquifer, and it is partially under Paraguay, under Brazil, and under Argentina. It is something that the people know. It's a natural wealth of this part of the world. The amount of sweet water. You have seen the Paraná in those incredible waterfalls. The Paraguay River, Paraná River, Paraguay has a lot of sweet, drinkable and usable water the whole year.
And also, one more question about, you tell a very interesting story about the Jesuits, that they have a part of history in the mate discovering and how it was being.
Yeah, I think that the history of the Jesuits is one of the most fascinating parts of Paraguayan history, because they created one of the most successful social experiments of group city existence of large Indian groups in the 16th and 17th century. They were the only ones that found out how to plant yerba mate. Nobody knows exactly how they did it, because they informed everything to Spain what they did. They never informed about yerba mate. At least it was never published.
It was like a secret.
Yeah, it was like an industrial secret. The others had to go into the faraway forest, and they had it there. Apparently 30 or 40,000 yerba plants have been planted in every Jesuit town, and they had about 30 towns. So 30 times 30,000 is a lot. It means that they had probably around 1 million plants in their system. They were the most important producers and the most important exporters of good quality yerba in the 16th and 17th century.
And how it was expanded to Europe, because we don't know much about how was the mate spread around the world.
In the last century, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, a lot of mate was taken to European laboratories like in Germany, in France, in England, to find out about what it was about. And all the results of these analysis was very positive. And there were various intentions to make mate more available in Europe, but we encountered a very big problem. That problem is Great Britain. The British did not want their business to be affected.
Because it was conquering competition.
Imagine if mate would have been something popular like the Asian tea, you know. And that's my own opinion, you know. It did not have the push of England. And England was the world's marketing director in the 19th century. It's interesting. There are some interesting stories. For example, in 1860, the Paraguayan government tried to sell mate to the Prussian king, the king of Prussia. And the king of Prussia had a couple of hundred soldiers try mate and see if it felt good. And it almost was a business. They didn't like it that you drink it like this one, but the Prussian king almost made a business with Paraguay, but then Paraguay had a very terrible war in 1865. But the results, the information from Berlin in those years from the Prussian people, they were very pleased with the taste and with the energetic consequences that this brings, because that's something that I think is so characteristic of mate tea. It is an energy drink, as you could say today, but it has no harm. I know people, so many people that drink 4-5 times mate in one day, and each time
Very
maybe they
strong,
drink, each time they maybe drink half a liter.
Yeah.
So they maybe drink 2 or 3 liters in one day. There is nothing known in Paraguay or Argentina that an amount of mate of this could be some hazard to your health.
I heard some fake stories about it was a mate drinkers can have a cancer. Do you have that?
But they say about
of
mouth cancer and cancer of the stomach. But this has been completely rejected. This is an information that came out of Uruguay a couple of years ago. But then other doctors of Uruguay have proven that these were only very singular cases. And one thing that could hurt your mouth is the water is too hot. And we recommend, in general, that you should not boil, not have boiling temperature. It's interesting that everywhere in the world, when you heat water, the water starts to make a sound, a while before it boils. When the water starts to get nervous, that's enough, My mother used to say, when the water starts to sing, you stop it, And that temperature is a temperature that your mouth and your throat accepts. Some people are used to drinking mate very hot. Maybe that's the problem some people had, was not the mate. It was the extreme overheated temperature of the water.
So they can drink anything.
No,
They could drink as hot water, and they have the same problem. With,
but there is no scientific proof that any form of harm, any health problem comes from the mate. A lot of mate drinkers, when they go to another country, they don't find it, or they don't find it right away, and then they say, well, I need my mate. And then they say that it's a little bit addictive. I think it's not an addiction in the physiological way. It is maybe a habit that people from here, they need it in the morning. My mother, she used to visit me when I lived out of the country years ago, when I studied. And when she came to my place for a couple of days, and she didn't have the whole same thing she had at home, she said, but I need this. I need my brand of mate. I need this. What I'm going to do? I said, just drink this one. That's what I have, It's not the same. It's, as you say, is maybe a habit that is pleasant. There are many pleasant habits. It's a good habit,
which helps you to have more energy, no harmful for health. The same as tea, same as a nice tea. We have a lot of fake stories about, tea is dangerous, but it's no proofs.
In Argentina and also in Paraguay, there are many workers that work many hours a day away from home, in the Chaco, in the Pampa, in Argentina. They have a breakfast, they drink mate, and then they go, Very often, the only thing during the day that they had is a cold mate somewhere about 12 or 1 o'clock. They did not have real lunch. And they say that this enables you to continue another 3 or 4 hours without being so worried about food, and then you come back. It is definitely something. I drove many hours in my life, and with the company many times only of the mate, I stop after 2 hours, have a couple of nice mates, because it's true, it's not recommended to drink the mate driving, because it distracts you, you know. But if you have somebody next to you, that's another story, you know. Then you can have it. But we always say, and the cars in South America, like my car, for example, has a little something that you push, comes out with a hole, and then this fits in. This kind of mates are very good for the car, because it has a lot of room. You don't need to fill it all, but it doesn't spill. So you put only mate to here, and then you put a little bit more of water when you drink it. You have a lot of room, and you drink it, and it doesn't spill. Smaller mates like this, they are more difficult to drink in the car.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. And also, I think maybe it's funny, but you say that before, just Paraguayans, I really like to work, and hardworking people a lot here. And I think maybe it's have a very strong communication with mate, because if it's not be a national habit for thousands of people, for millions of people, they will not work as hard as they can do it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting. In our company, every day they have twice, practically half an hour. We say 20 minutes, but it's always more than that. Between 9 and 9:30 in the morning, and between 4 and 4:30. It's not exact hour, but they go and they all drink their money and they talk, because mate is something that helps very much to talk. And especially if you drink the mate and with 4 people, the one that drinks, he doesn't talk. he listens. Yeah. It's interesting. And a lot of people that come to Paraguay, invest in Paraguay and have an industry, then they say, no, I will forbid the mate, it's a waste of time. It is not a waste of time. These people, you will see that in general, people laugh, you know. They make fun of the other person, they talk about soccer, they different things, you know.
Like, connecting people,
and then they work. In our company, for example, everything is done by the kilo. So they work hard, and then they enjoy their mate. Then they work again, and it is much better that way. It works well. They would really, really be upset and dislike it if the company would tell them no more mate during working hours. Yeah.
And what's about the processing of mate? Because there was a difference between the huge industry companies and as it was like granido on the fire and the modern. What is the traditional way, and you think a more suitable way of production?
I tell you, we do our product in a way that we try to combine tradition with hygienic processes, you know. Originally, this was done on regular soil, you know. It was done on open fire. Very often, you're doing the process of drying it. It rains. That's terrible. The water on the newly dried is terrible. All our process is done under zinc metal roofs, you know. Everywhere you have a clean floor, but we use 2 things which are absolutely traditional. The drying of mate has 2 processes. The first one is a strong, short contact of the leaf with fire, fast dry. In the original ones, it was direct contact with fire. The big, large operations today, they use a long metal round thing that it passes thousands of kilos through it, and they have the fire outside. The fire does not touch the product. It might have some advantages, but it has another taste, you know. And we use it in the original way, which is a round cylindrical form that is all done with wire. The direct fire comes from underneath, and so this doesn't get burned. You have somebody looking at it and moving this by hand. Yes, we have it also with electric motors, but we found out the electric motor has always the same speed. Suddenly the fire is stronger, you know. And when the guy sees the fire stronger, then he goes faster. Yeah.
But motor can't do that.
Yeah, exactly. Next time I'm going to film for you in July and June. It makes an interesting sound, like tris, 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 tris. The leaves have a little bit of water in the form of a round blister, you know.
And they just explode.
And with direct fire, these blisters explode. And this is very interesting. It avoids, in certain ways, a type of fermentation that could rot. If we have tried to put the leaves directly in the second process only, it's not the same. You know, it tastes different. And then from there, you have to let it cool. That's something that most people don't want to do because you waste time. It comes out from the direct fire. You let it there. Let it there for 2 hours or 3 hours. Let it calm down. Then you put it on top of the barbacoa. The second process only has hot air. They say that the word barbecue in English comes from the Guarani barbacoa. It's a discussion between linguists. They say there is no other place in the world where the word barbecue was used before this word was known. And in certain ways it has certain, because it is like a barbecue. You put it on top there. The only thing it's made of wood, and like for example, you have a certain number of meters, a hole of this size, you know, you make a big fire on the other side. It has to be a certain type of trees that don't make a lot of smoke and are hot and will slowly burn, you know. We have in Paraguay one tree, for example, Curupa'u, you know. It looks very similar to this. But the people that put down the tree, they let the thick parts for other purposes, like building houses, etc. And the thinner parts, which actually would not be used for that, those are cut in pieces for roasting the yerba. This hot air goes to the center of the barbacoa, where there's a hole about this size. And on top of that, there is a metal straw, like a hat, that you can higher or lower. And this avoids sparks to go into the tea because it causes a fire. I lost once, about 6 or 7 years ago, about 8,000 kilos.
Wow. Because of firing.
Because the people that were working, they were not paying.
Yeah,
they didn't pay attention. And the reason, fundamentally, they didn't let it cool. They pushed it, and there were sparks in the first place. And they put it on top, the sparks plus the hot air, and these are leaves. They burn, you know. When it starts burning, you can do nothing. Because if you use a product to turn it off, the yerba is lost anyway, you know. And, well, they say it happens at least once in your life. You lose one harvest with the fire. Then, up there, at a temperature of about 70 degrees hot air, 60, 70 degrees hot air, there goes a process of 15 up to 20 hours. And the thing is that you don't leave it there. It has to move because it's not equal heat everywhere. So the person called the uru, the person that directs it, he goes up there and he moves, but he doesn't stay there all the time. He goes and sees, and the ones that is really more dry, puts it to the side, you know, and pushes more to the center, those that he thinks. It's a simple way to find out how it's, you break. It has to break, and not and then you let it cool.
Again.
And you let it cool down, and then it goes to a machine, which is a breaker, because these pieces sometimes are this long, and there it goes into sacks, bags, used to make of jute, of these Indian that come so much from India, these fibers that coffee beans are put into normally. But today, these are those because they're very expensive. But they use different type of bags, preferably from cotton, to put it in there, and there it's taken to certain deposits that have to have wooden floor, about this separation from the ground. Humidity is the big enemy of the tea, you know?
Yeah.
And also the sides have to have wood, you know? And there it goes to sleep for a year.
At least.
Yeah, and you could say that a year is a good, because there is a lot of blending. Sometimes you use something of 10 months with something that is a year and a half. And this is one of the secrets to maintain.
To know what is the taste.
Yeah,
of each,
and we do it in a way, as I told you, all our people have to drink the mate and the tereré, because they basically drink tereré when it's hot with cold water, right? They have to drink from there what's coming out of the mill right now. Then they have to tell the man that makes the blending. Then he puts, well, I have put here 200 kilos of that, 200 kilos of this, and 50 of this. Well, this 200 was too much. I'm going to put only 150 of this and change a little bit the combination. And then they try again, you know.
And they have some standard taste, which, and they have some material, and they need to complete it to have a standard. Yeah.
In some companies that I know, then they, for example, comes a customer that brings especially good yerba. Then the people say, put that apart. We're going to use for our own use that one, right? No. That's no good. They have to use whatever is being packed that day. Yerba mate. Once it comes to the second process of grinding to put it to the size of what it will go in the package, that is considered the date of the beginning of the usage. Normally, the government says consume within 24 months. But this is more like saying it's best before. Or it doesn't mean that after 2 years, this pack of yerba will be no more good. It will slowly lose some aroma. It will be softer and it will smell less, you know. Especially the smell goes slowly away. Mate is packed in paper, but in the more economic versions, and the ones that we also sell a lot for the farmers, with plastic bags. These people, they will consume it within a day or two. You know why? The very small plastic bag of 250 grams. First of all, it's nice because you see the product inside, you know. You can see that it's the right color, you know. They like it. And then they put it on the horseback, you know. And if it rains, it doesn't matter, because and the other bag, if they become a rain and they're working in the countryside the whole day, wet yerba is no more good. You have to take it immediately and consume it, you know. What I wanted to mention, I didn't mention before, this great-grandfather of mine, he found out what the Jesuits knew. They knew how did these people have yerbales, and nobody ever after that could do it. They tried with the seed. He and his brother. His name was Friedrich, and his brother was Otto. They tried with different seeds, and it didn't work out. The problem is that the seed of the mate must be exactly at the right process of ripening. It has to be ripe, but not getting dry. It gets to a certain point, every day, the color is more dark, no? Then it comes to something like a violet, very dark violet color. That's the right moment. There you pick it, leave it in water for a certain amount, if possible, a little bit warm water, for a day or so that will help put it a little bit softer. And then even with your hand, you can do like this. And each one of these little seeds has 4 or 5 of these fruits have 4 or 5 little seeds inside, you know. These little seeds, ripe like they were, you put in the ground. It has to be nice sand. The way we kill undesirable whatever in we throw boiling water on it. So it doesn't hurt anything, In other words, but whatever could eat the little yerba will not be there. Then it will come back. But at least, and then we add every day a bit of water in the morning, we put it about 1 centimeter under the ground. We level it, we put these seeds there and put another 1 centimeter of sand on top. This soil has to have some sand every day, and you have to see when the first comes out, then the others will follow, Then you have to cover it with something, because the birds come and eat it. They eat the little plants. It's very nice. I don't know. Maybe they like mate too, But then you put something for the fact to trees not to get into it, And then after approximately 3 months after you planted them, they start coming out. And then you have thousands of them, And then you have to wait various months. The little plant, it grows slow, has to have at least 3 leaves or 4. Then manually, each one of these little leaves is put into plastic bags that are like this, They are 20 centimeters high and 5 centimeters in diameter. We allow long hair for the root, You make a little hole there and put this in close again and hope that it will be all right, Some don't continue. But the majority of these continue, and you put there a couple thousand like this, and you start the same process of watering under certain area that gets some sunlight, but not
too much.
Not directly, all the time.
To cover it by some
And
land.
this process will bring that the plant, if this is the plastic little bag, the plant will be approximately 20 centimeters on top of there. Then they are big enough to be put in the ground. In the ground, you make a hole of about this size. It's the size of the normal size when you want to put, in the farms when they put the wire around, you put, and you make a hole about this long, which is about the size of one of these instruments. Take out, and you put this inside. The plant will not practically come out. The plant will be like this, and there you still have a hole. This helps against the sun, against the wind, and it helps water to stay in there.
Yeah.
And if possible, you should plant these in an area where there are some trees, so you have semi-shadow,
Yeah, I know.
If you plant it directly outside, like in a soccer field or something, and there's not, once the plant goes out in December, November, and sometimes that hurts. It's very, very strong. You have to take care of the plant for at least 2 summers. On the 3rd summer, the plant is more or less strong enough for itself, But it is a lot of dedication, the yerba, to put up a yerba plantation. And it has some problems. For example, certain, they walk, and they eat the leaves, for example. And you have to take care of some of these things, but you don't need to use any toxic products or anything. And it's a great plant. Once it gets to the 3rd or 4th year, you know that you made it with that plant. And you know that for the next 15 years, you will have some money coming out of that plant.
I heard there is some diseases such as white flea or something, and some bigger companies which try to fight it with amount of pesticides or something.
This is possible, but they will not use pesticide and harvest after that. You see, there is a rule that any sort of spraying should be done at least that much time before the harvest, which means that you will have at least 5 or 6 rains after that. I don't have in the paper exactly. We personally don't do it, but if somebody is going to spray, especially for certain animals that harm, little insects that harm the leaves. There are some products. I personally don't use it at all. But this is possible. And the harvest is done in the winter. The harvest is done in July, in June, no? And normally the plant, 2 months later, in September, a lot of the new branches already come out. Yerba is no good to use when it's new. If I would make a second harvest in December, which technically is possible because they will have, again, that will be no good. It will have no taste. You know?
Because we're comparing the taste of small companies as yours, I can call it small, but comparing to huge giants, the taste is much, much, much more better than there. It depends of technology, or it depends of growing. What's the main reason why you have so much difference?
I think that the most important thing to take care is that, according to the law, mate should not have more than 20% of product that is not the leaf. The leaf has to, the green material has to be 80%. Very few respect that. We respect that percentage. And this is one of the reasons why this type of tea, of mate, you can drink many more mates out of the same one. The other thing has to do with geography. In certain areas, and it is true, especially where you have the biggest companies located, it's an area where it rains much more, and where the amount of kilos they get per plant is much higher. But it also means that certain basic products, that insides like matein or so, percentage-wise is less in those. If you go farther north, there is a different soil, and it produces less per plant, which means it's also a plant which each leaf has more of the flavor of the product.
Because it grows slower.
It grows less kilos. Normally, when you get a yerba leaf, or let's say 1,000 kilos of yerba leaves, when you dry it, after the process is over, you will have 38 or 39% of it, 380, 390, around 40%. 60% is water. It's gone, you know? And this varies from areas. In the northern part of the country, we have a lower production in kilos, but we are convinced that it is a leaf that has more of the flavor material than in other areas. That is if I'm talking about somebody that makes an honest procedure. Then there is also that very often things are done in a sort of anti-natural way. Today there are forms to create that instead of keeping 1 year the product, some of these people, they do it in 2 weeks. You know, they put mate leaves in huge rooms and add very hot vapor, you know, steam.
I understood.
And then dry it, and then add again the steam, hot humidity. They create the natural process of 1 year, at least in the look.
It must be here, but they just speed it up.
It is not illegal. It is not illegal. They call it chamber, you know. Other thing, a lot of big companies today use natural gas, of which Russia has a lot, to heat the process. Well, it's a way, you know. But we think, especially in the way that you dry it with direct contact with fire, the importance of the wood.
You stop a fermentation by this.
Exactly, but you get the color, and then that's the other problem, and this is something very important. A couple of years ago, maybe 20-something years ago, In Paraguay, all the yerba mate was only yerba mate flavor. Then some smart guys came and say, why don't we, add some flavors? Today, an important part of the mate sold in Argentina and Paraguay has the biggest variety of flavors. Mint is one of the most popular for tereré because it gives a fresh, cold flavor. Yeah, and what I always tell many people, the majority of these mint flavors added to yerba, those are synthetic products brought from China.
Yes,
see,
it's crazy. Yeah.
but this is true. It is not illegal. I'm not saying that this should, but it is important to know when you choose a product. And today, the amount of, I don't know the names in English, but the variety of flavors that people add to yerba mate is very, very large. It's interesting that a lot of mate producers, big companies in the last years, everywhere in the world, looking fit is good, Then they added our mate is for fitness. It doesn't. You will not gain any kilos. There is no mate that makes you gain kilos. I mean, the sugar you put in it, the bread you eat with it, or the chipa or the sandwich or whatever. But if you drink a tereré or you drink a mate, I mean, the amount of calories that this has is absolutely has very little significance, but they put a girl with showing a nice looking slim fit, saying our mate helps you reduce weight. It is true that drinking mate is good also to reduce weight because many people, for many people, it diminishes the appetite outside of eating hours, and this is. But I mean, the truth is that mate is a very pleasant drink. It is a drink that gives you energy. It helps you to be alert, driving, doing a lot of things. And it has absolute studying, reading, and especially people that are a lot on the computers. It is interesting that it is proven, and many of these people have written about it, how much it helped them. And many in Europe, you sell so many energy drinks of different sorts that they change them for mate, and mate brings you to an alert position, but then you can sleep, I mean, sometimes some other people that sort of uppers, then your eyes are open like this, and you want to sleep, and you don't sleep. I drink a lot of mate, but I drink absolutely any hour. I start drinking at about 6 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes we're drinking tereré with my son, with my family, at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. But then I go to bed relatively early, about 10 o'clock at night, have absolutely no problem to sleep. I mean, it does not have any harm to your, for example, to your sleeping habits, comparing with some other energy drinks, which do very often affect your sleeping habits.
Especially coffee.
But you need to use not too hot water. I find if you use too hot water, you cannot sleep.
No, I don't like. No, you're right. I don't. That's why it's interesting. You drink with other people. What I tell the people, sometimes I drink in the car and with a thermos bottle, right? And I said, we're going to start drinking in 5 minutes, okay? Open open at the top and let it breathe. In 5 minutes, it will have the temperature that I like. And but I said, if you want to start drinking, drink. But you give me in about 5 minutes and leave the top open, And it's true. And it's some people drink the tereré extremely ice cold. I don't either like it so cold, totally cold. I like it cool, nice, But it's habits, But it is better to get a habit of not too hot water. It has to be a temperature that's hot, but which does not hurt your mouth,
Very interesting. Maybe Alex, you have some question, maybe?
Yes, I know they now start to be popular in Brasilia, the green mate. So this mate, it's not to be keep for the long time, like you
Exactly,
know,
exactly. That is a very good point. The green mate, the way it comes out from the first, when we put it in the bag to sleep, they, instead of putting it in the bag to sleep, they already grind it. Yeah? It has a much greener color, and it's also bitter.
Bitter and more strong taste.
Strong, yeah. They like it that way. Brazil is a very unique country in this sense because there's a very specific geographic area where they drink mate like this. In Rio Grande do Sul, the Gaúchos Brasileiros, and Santa Catarina. In those two. Farther north, for example, you go to a beach in Brazil and you will hear the person selling something. They say mate, mate. In Brazil, the consumption of cold mate tea is very popular. Something that in Paraguay, the Paraguayans would not on the street buy cold mate tea. They love to drink the tereré, but the mate tea, which we call cocido. Cocido means something like cooked, you know. For the cocido, you use hot water that's very hot, you know, and you pour it and wait 3-4 minutes, you know.
So brew like tea, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, you get, and you put a certain amount. I love that, you know. Put that, and for the cocido, we make more powder, you know. It's finer. It's a different machine, and that one brings the flavor out very much. It's not exactly the same. A pity I didn't bring you some, but this is something. So it's different. But they use it for the mate and
for the cold.
And in Brazil, this green tea, they love it, and it's interesting. Their mate things are very big, you know.
I see.
They put in there about a quarter kilo, you know.
Wow.
Very good for a factory because you sell more, right? But they drink one in a day.
So
You know, they drink also individual, you know. They're very big. He sits, he drinks, and then maybe 20 minutes later,
So you can drink all day,
and
one time.
and they call it cuya. These big things, you know. Very different habit. But Brazil has a lot of mate, but it doesn't compete. We don't compete. It's a complete different taste, but very often leftovers of the Brazilian mate, when their mate gets old and gets more yellow, they cannot sell it, but people want it green. Then comes the dumping, you know. And some unscrupulous companies, they buy this Brazilian tea and they mix it with ours. But that one that comes from over there is so much cheaper, you know.
So, for example, if we talk about traditional Paraguayan style, it during the aging, it much longer stay the taste comparing to the taste of Brazilian style.
Yes. First of all, they grind it when it's very new, and there is the machine. We think that the machines that hit the leaves, from that point, the process of drinking it starts. You know, when you do that at the beginning, that very fine green tea will lose its aroma so much quicker. Remember coffee. You can have coffee beans for a very long time. But once you have done it, better you drink it in 3 weeks, you know, because then, well, it's something similar, you know, that this very fine product loses aroma. We get a lot of these Brazilians that they sell their tea here, and it's like that. It's like a powder, you know, very, very light already. And they, chimarrón, right. And it's different habits. I mean, just that it's like saying that in some countries they prefer the very, very new wine, and in other countries they prefer the very old wine, you know. I mean, we all think that the wine, the older the better, you know. Mate is, as we said, has a process. And even the best mate, I think, after 2 years, if it's in a bag or it's already has been past all the processes, it loses aroma. And if all of them lose taste, I haven't tried all of them. Very few products reach in the supermarket an age of 2 years. If you have your product in the supermarket and it's coming to an end of the 2 years process, it's because nobody buys it. You know?
But is it true that maybe it's similar to loose leaf tea and broken leaf? At the same time, loose leaf tea much longer can be stored, and the broken leaf very quickly.
Yeah.
And even fresh, it's have much less aroma.
Yeah.
This style of broken Brazilian style, and this not loose leaf but leaf much bigger. It's have more rich in taste for me.
I agree. I mean, there aren't any specific technical studies doing, unfortunately, you know. But I think that it is like that. And I made a comparison with coffee. I think that this leaf, when it stays in a more natural size, the leaves, when the leaves practically stay almost of its original size. You know, when they get into the bags, they break a bit, you know, but they stay there.
So
you know?
you keep for the 1 year. The leaf is.
The leaf, very often the leaf is totally.
Only then you broke it.
Then. What we break is the big parts.
Before you put in the bag.
It is something that, you know, we think it's normal, you know. It has to be smaller because otherwise you can't put it in the bag. But we don't need it this small. The loose. We call it cancheado. In Guarani, it's morovire. Cancha is like a field, you know. And originally, what was done, the early ages, they had a round thing with a wooden floor, and there was a piece of wood, very heavy, maybe this thick, and you had to make it like a cone, you know. But you had to study the size of the circle with the cone, so the cone made a correct mathematical circle, you know. And then you put very hard pieces of wood on it, you know. No. You put a donkey at the end, and the donkey will walk for a long time. And this cone, with not the cone completely, only it's like this, you know, and it makes it smaller, and then they put it in the bags, you know. Today, that's done with machine, you know, but the machine, its separation is about like this, so it doesn't make it small. It goes like this, and then it goes into the bags. And I will send you some pictures from San Pedro of the material before it goes into the machine. You will like that, yeah. And you will like. I'll show you also aged. One aged 3 months, 1 6 months. You will see the difference in the color. It goes through a process of getting slightly more yellow, you know.
And what is about aging? Again, back to this side. Why I'm asking, because in a tea culture, Chinese and Taiwanese and even Japanese, there is a special tradition of aging tea, and it becomes better. And sometimes there is technology. I think because it can be some similar in processing. They have different types of aging. Sometimes it's just make a raw tea and store it for 10, 20, 30 years, and it becomes also, as you told, the mate losing of aroma and losing of taste, but it's not losing, it's just changing because of prolongation of natural fermentative process. And the same other type of teas like oolong tea, they have a storage for 10 years, and after that they roast it again and sell as an aged tea. What do you think? Maybe it's not traditional for mate, but maybe you tried some naturally aged more than 2 or maybe 5 or even 10 years mate. It have some special taste which can be also interesting for drinking.
We should try. The general knowledge is that it loses taste. And we have Also something very problematic, which is humidity. You know, Paraguay is a country with a high level of humidity. All the places where we store has these metal roofs, you know, and all of it is wood, you know. The temperatures during the day here in December, January, you could have 35 degrees, right? But on the roof, you have more than 60. Yeah.
Wow.
You can't walk on it, it's too hot, you know. Then this brings down the temperature, and it keeps certain stability so the yerba does not pick up humidity, you know. If you would leave yerba for 1 year in a regular room, it would pick up humidity. It's like rice or other products but it's interesting. We should try in putting it maybe in plastic bag or maybe in glass, something, and try after a certain. We have never done it. Yeah,
it can be interesting.
And when a yerba is old, very often it tastes like bitter, you know. But that's because it was hit by humidity, you know. And then we call it, says picado in Spanish. And when somebody brings a yerba picado, we open from the
Smell,
you smell the picado, yes. And that's one of the important things of the person that mixes. And that's why we throw everything on the floor, and then it's pushed with wooden sticks into the mixing thing. But they have to see those 5 or 6 bags of mate that are going to be
each bag.
individually open, and there's a lot of light there. And then suddenly he said, huele a picado. Yeah, and we know whose it is because each bag has the initials of the producer. You know, we produce one important part. We produce ourselves, but we have producers in our area, farmers that give us 2,000 kilo, 3,000 kilo, 4,000 kilos. It depends. The majority less than 10,000 kilos. You know. Which in Paraguay, those are small farmers. They maybe have 1 or 2 hectares of yerba mate, no? And then you have to see if all of them got the problem. Sometimes just 1 or 2, and there's no problem. In certain quantities, and for certain, we produce also certain low-cost portions, you know? And sometimes you do in a certain artwork with mixing again. It is not bad, it just cannot be done by itself completely, you know.
Must be
if you add to that same one a portion of very new one, you know, it's not 10 points out of 10, but it works.
This aged thing is very interesting for me.
Yeah.
And also there is a main thing that during the storage there can be also some investigations. Is there some dangerous thing that can be happen inside the mud?
Like bacteria.
Is it not or not?
No, not that I know of. And as I said, no. There is. I have a book. I'm going to look at the in the index. It's a reference book for yerba producer, produced by the Argentinian INTA. It's a National Institute of Agricultural Technology. In Argentina, they do have a lot of it. Yeah, I'm going to see if it says something about fungus. I don't know anything about it. I have read a lot of these articles, but especially how close together a plant can be planted, the differences of level on the soil, certain animals that could attack the plant. Especially as I told you, for me it's also something new because we have never intended
Like
to do it.
you roast it before with the fire, so you stop all bacteria, you kill
Yeah,
all
yeah.
mushrooms, then you keep it.
Yeah,
I
and you say, it's certainly.
especially love that you really try to be deeper inside the technology, because for us, because we start to work together and also buy your product, it's very interesting that we can later on have some experimental style of a product, because I work in China a lot, and there is a extremely huge competition in production, and each manufacturer, if he really clever, he tries to do something
new.
special. To discover a new type of tea or a new type of storage of roasting of anything in type of. But in the same time, I see that you already try to keep a lot of tradition, and also keep the same time keep your style in that. And I think it also can be some this type of discoveries, like fermentation or aging or anything else, can be also type to bring something completely new to the market, which also the same time not like these artificial flavors or something that's really not so traditional, but the same time it's completely natural, because it's you don't need to add something on to change your style of work, but it can bring some new in the taste, or completely it can be something like a VIP product in some, because it's keep more energy of building, so it will be very interesting to discover something like that in future.
You're leaving tomorrow, right?
We're leaving. A whole day tomorrow. We will still here, and we will leave.
I think
After tomorrow evening.
Where are you flying to from here?
We're flying to Buenos Aires, and after that, stay there for a couple of hours, and flying to Rome, and there to Moscow. So
now that you're going to Buenos Aires, it's something very interesting. I love Buenos Aires. I went to university in Buenos Aires. I have best memories of Argentina. But Argentinians have, you just had them in Moscow in the soccer championship, no? They like to say that they invented everything, you know? Every time you will talk about mate, they will say, mate is Argentinian. But there are so many documents. That's Ilex Paraguariensis. That was put in the early 1800s. They wanted to put it in two different ways, but it stayed with that denomination in Latin. They tried to call it Ilex Curitiba, well, a couple of them. And it's the Brazilians have tried the Curitiba. They wanted also call it, I think Saint Hilaire, who was a botanist of France at the time. But what is interesting is that I will let you know. I send you photos. In 1904. There was a book edited in Berlin about Paraguay from the Paraguayan ambassador to the kingdom of Sachsen. In those years, Germany was not one united. They still had kingdoms, you know. It was Prussia. This was Sachsen with its capital Dresden, you know. This book describes by a very well-known man that worked many years in Paraguay for the government. His name was von Truenfeld. You know, he describes how my great-grandfather was the first. He knew my great-grandfather, and he edited this in 1906. Then there is another book by a man called Alfred Schuster, who made a monumental book about Paraguay, also edited at the beginning of the 1900s in Europe, in Germany. And then these two men who were people writing about general things of Paraguay, and from government levels, they had known my great-grandfather, and they knew, and the greatest botanist of Paraguay, who is a sort of a national icon, hero, called Moises Bertoni. He is the man that studied the most Paraguayan flora, Paraguayan plants, etc. He, in his books of the beginning of 1900, in his various publishing materials, he mentions my great-grandfather. People were asking him, Dr. Bertoni, could you help us with this, with the seeds, with the little plants? And he said, you better go and see Mr. Nьюман. He is the one, he is the really one that knows. I don't know so much about this. And then the Argentinians start saying that there was a Frenchman living in Buenos Aires. First of all, where he's going to get the seeds from? About 1,500 kilometers away, there was no tree, right? That they started working on this. But this is typical. People say, no, we invented this, we invented this, that. But it doesn't bother me. It is, there is no way to question that the Jesuits knew how to do it, but it was lost in 1767,
And how long is the time of lost
more than 100 years.
Wow.
Yes, between the Jesuits had a conflict with the King of Portugal in Brazil and with the King of Spain. Europe had changed from the Augsburg dynasty, who were very Catholics, originally from Austria. The Bourbons, which were a French origin dynasty, came into be the kings of Spain. And their relation with the Jesuits was not good. Yeah. And they slowly had, finally, the King of Portugal and also the King of Spain expelled the Jesuits from all America. And so it's interesting that Catarina asked them to go. Where do you think they went? They went to Russia.
Wow.
To Ukraine. Huh? Wow. You have to look this up. Yeah. But Catarina let no one in Europe, they said no. Like today, they could say, no, he's a terrorist, right? Yeah. For many of them, they said, no, the Jesuits, they complicate things. And from Spain, they had to go. And many of them went to Russia.
That's why we still have many relations with Argentina, with the Paraguay.
I think
imagine 120 years later, they planted again yerba. Where did they bring the yerba from in those years? From the wild, natural growing yerbales in the northeast of Paraguay and in the area of Mato Grosso in Brazil, in the area which is now Ponta Porã. The Brazilian government in 1880 gave one company called Mate Laranjeira 5 million hectares of jungle, not as a sale, as a lease. They used it 50 years until 1930. And every year, they took out of there about 5 or 6 million kilos of dried yerba. They were the main suppliers of yerba in those years. This all changed with the discovery of having the plant behind your house,
Because we need to use a wild yerba.
There was only this wild yerba. There was no other. And yerba was very expensive. And then with the yerba being planted behind your house, the first couple of years was good, but then, the price, the price went very bad in 1930. There was so much yerba planted in Argentina that the Argentinian government passed a very strange law. You had to go to the government to ask for permission for harvest,
Wow.
You know that, eh? And you were forbidden to plant new plants.
It's now or it's
No. This was between 1930 and more or less 19. It lasted 25 years or so.
Always was a big business around yerba.
Yeah. In those years, it was very complicated because everybody loved it. They wanted it, and everybody plants. And suddenly, come the 5 years where all the plants suddenly there was too much. In 1935, there was too much yerba in Argentina, and the prices went down. Brazil had the same sort of problems with coffee. What they used to do with coffee, they dump coffee in the ocean. So there is not too much offer.
Wow. Just to increase the price.
Yeah, and to have some
Crazy.
to have some fishes living
And
coffee.
as you told, there was a very bad, very disgusting war in Paraguay.
Oh,
with the three
terrible!
countries.
Yeah.
And for that time before, Paraguay was much bigger. And this is
Yes.
why Lex Paraguay, because it's territories which now belongs to Brazil, and Argentina was part of them was Paraguay.
What you say is right. An Argentinian doesn't accept that. A Brazilian, they say that both areas were disputed. But the truth is that for long years in the colony, the area of today's Misiones belonged to Paraguay. And Paraguay had rights on the Mato Grosso. But, this is question of lawyers, it's question of,
complicated.
and who has the biggest guns at the end, But it's true. The largest production of wild mate in the 80s and 90s, the 1880, 1890, until my great-grandfather started with the planted yerba, Brazil had an immense semi-monopoly on that from the Mato Grosso area. There was a brand name called Cruz de Malta, the Malte Cross, which I think is the oldest existing brand of mate in South America. But today it belongs to a big corporation. They have changed owners many times, no? But that was the yerba that originally came from Brazil. And from the area of Mato.
Owners is Argentinians.
Yeah. Owners are Argentinians. And from Paraguay, there was a huge company based in London called Industrial Paraguay, which purchased about 2 million hectares of land from the government, where most of the yerba planted after the war. The government was bankrupt, they had to sell. And these people, they also produced wild yerba in large quantities. Those two companies probably produced half of all the yerba consumed in those days. Fortunately, it is something that you can keep at home. It doesn't get bad. You don't need to sell it to an industry because you don't have the machine. Theoretically, with very small machines, you could grind yerba. It's not all the same, but that is a good thing. It is an anti-monopolic thing.
There is a government
Everybody
restrictions
can-
against monopoly.
No. We have no anti-monopolic laws in Paraguay like they do have in North America. But, for example, in this country, soya is big business. See, yerba mate is a business for many small landowners. See? I mean, you don't have. In Argentina, it's a little bit different. In Argentina, there are 2 or 3 very big companies. The company that makes taragüí is a company called Las Marias, and they have the largest yerba plantation in the world, in the province of Corrientes, which that's a very large company. But in Argentina, also in Misiones, many producers have 10 or 15 or 20 hectares, which is ideal, And in Paraguay, in the north, the producers have 2 hectares, 3 hectares, 4 hectares.
Even smaller.
Yeah, or even some only 1, And in Itapúa, where you went, there the properties are a bit larger. And there they have some producers that have 200 hectares. But in the north, no. And I am personally in favor, in the case of yerba mate, that this is a very good business for small producers because they do it the proper way. And you don't look for the little margin and the big volume. If the small producer will cheat to make a little money, he will make very little money on it, But the big scale producer, on a little something, like you said, changing the time of getting yellow, he makes a lot of money because he sells millions of kilos. But for the other, it's a big hassle, and to make a little money. That is the case why the majority of the producers in small scale yerba usually are pretty decent.
The quality is better.
Yeah, we control individually every bag, you know. It's open, you see it, then you put it to sleep, you know. And we don't throw it all. We open just the mouth, you know, see this, and put it like that. And it's, imagine, we have been doing this for 68 years.
Wow.
Yerba, our yerba is the oldest commercial brand in Paraguay, which there are many companies that existed long before that, but none of them exists anymore. These brands don't exist anymore. Most of the famous yerba brands in Paraguay, they started in the 50s and 60s, you know?
Yeah.
But ours started in 1947, you know? And after a couple of years, my father took place, and the area where it collects the product started in 1947, which makes with really the age that 14 has right now, it's the oldest in Paraguay. None of these, what I mentioned to you, this old Cruz de Malta, that has never been considered a Paraguayan brand. That has always been packed in Buenos Aires. They took the raw material to Buenos Aires and it was packed there.
And before they take some material from Paraguay too.
Yes,
Wow.
from the area from Concepcion, a little bit north from where we are. That was an area through which they purchased Paraguayan wild yerba.
Is it many companies like that, which is because of free counters involved in that?
You are experts in tea. You don't change your tea brand every day.
Yeah, of course.
And with yerba, it's a little bit the same. You know, the difference in price has to be very big.
If
Or
you
your
take from
problem,
other country,
or the problem of your pocket has to be very big, so you buy a cheaper brand. But in general, if you produce something that keeps its quality and keeps its flavor, people will stay with you. And at the border, there is a lot of going back and forth. But in general, Brazilians don't buy our yerba because they are too yellow. And we don't buy their yerba because they are too green, you know. But we compete with Argentinian. But
because it's a closer tradition.
their yerba is less strong in principle. But what is interesting, in Argentina, they spent a lot in marketing, and they spent a lot in packaging. You know, they put the emphasis on in different things. Smaller companies in Paraguay try to have a good priced yerba, say competitive price, and spend as little as possible on publicity and on the radio, marketing, etc., television,
that's the rightest thing.
and have a decent packaging, but with a low cost, you know. And even it's interesting that to mention. One of the things that people always ask is the thing of the glue. How do you put it together? Because of synthetic glues. No, we use a totally natural glue. You know,
what it comes from?
It comes from wheat. The same like make a bread.
Understood. Wow.
With water,
Wow.
it only has one trick.
I think maybe you one who do that.
No, it only has one trick. You put it, right? And you why? Because the weight keeps it there for a couple of minutes. When this guy has 100 bags, then he can package 5, and then it's already glued enough. They ask us from the government, where is your authorized brand for glue? And I said, here, we use this. I have never heard that it's for human consumption. It could be bad wheat, you know, flour, regular flour, you know. And then he laughed and he said, all right, you know. But I think we probably are the only ones. Really, but this is not our invention. This is a popular glue for paper among poor people. For school, in school, today they all have Scotch Brides and all these things, you know. But many, many years ago, 50, 60 years ago, none of those products existed in Paraguay. So you need the craft paper, this brown paper, you know. Your teacher said, you have to put this like this, you know. And to glue together, people took a little bit from their mother's bread basket, you know, a little bit of water, you know, and make it fluid enough, and put like this, and hold it a little, and then it's all right.
Great.
But this is, people laugh at me. They say, use something more practical. I said, so far, so good, you know.
Okay, so maybe you have again meeting later.
No, yeah, I can,
Thank you
yeah.
a lot
No.
for, so constructive interview. Maybe the last question, maybe you can say something.
No, I want to say something, because you're going to show this in Russia. When I was in my 20s, I studied in Argentina, and because of my knowledge of English, I speak fluent German, and my liking for history, I got a very interesting job. For 7-8 years, I traveled the world. I traveled the world as a tour conductor. And one place I always wanted to go and never went in those years was Russia. You know? So I hope that I can. I had one group from Argentina. We were in Nepal and we were in Srinagar, and then we were in Delhi and in Taj Mahal in Agra, and they went to Russia. I looked at all the paintings of the Hermitage. You know, I tried to learn something, and then the number of people was not enough for a free ticket. You know, they needed 15 to have a free tour leader. You know, so I flew from Bombay. They flew from Bombay to Moscow, and I flew from Bombay to Baghdad, but I could not get out of the airport because of being Paraguayan, and from Baghdad to Athens, and the whole flight, I said, I would have rather flew to Moscow. But I hope this dream will be, because now the children,
and it will be welcome.
and I have a daughter who will spend one semester at the University of Berlin with a scholarship this year, starting August. And I told her, I'm going to visit you. Maybe there, I know it's not short, but maybe there will be time to get over to you guys.
That's great.
Okay.
We have a space, we have a clubs, we can some
and
lectures.
drink very old tea.
Okay. Thank you very much.
No,
Klaus.
it's been a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for us to meet you, and hope they will communicate.
No,
again.
it's been a pleasure for me and for us, especially in our family. The fact to let people know about yerba mate is for us almost a religion, you know, in the sense that we think it is a very valuable, very healthy, very good plant for the people, and especially in areas where it grows so well, like in Paraguay, and it's very good for small farmers. In Paraguay, like in Russia, like in many countries, young people want to go to the cities, you know, and planting 2 hectares or 3 hectares of yerba mate by a father, hoping that when the young boy is 15 or 17, he will have already his daily money for any other things. With 2 or 3 hectares of mate, he can already live, you know, which he could do other things in the countryside. I'm all right, do it with a computer. But there you have the mate that will give you your food and bread, you know. That's my dream. We give away a lot, thousands of mate plants for free to some people.
Oh, that's great.
Because we have our own production and we give it away. Not millions, but 1,000 this one, 500 this one. People that come and show their interest, I said, okay, I'll give it to you. In 5 years, if it's a good product, I'll charge you something for it. But, try. Yeah?
Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much,
No,
Klaus. Again.
it's a pleasure. I must
you.
go also.
Thank you.
And
1 minute, I will take it. Microphone. That's
and
great.
and I will take a picture with you three guys.
Okay, of course.